I refused to let my fiancé's son be ring bearer instead of my nephew, then discovered he was spying on me and manipulating his son. 2 months later, his ex-wife revealed the shocking truth about their marriage. I'm Amber, 32F, and I've been engaged to William, 38M, for about a year now. We're planning our wedding for next summer, and everything was going smoothly until the issue of the ring bearer came up. To understand the situation better, I need to provide some background about our families and relationships. I grew up in a close-knit family with my parents and younger sister, Jenny, 30F. Our mom passed away when I was 18 and Jenny was 16, which brought us even closer together. I took on a lot of responsibility in helping to raise Jenny during her last 2 years of high school while also starting college. It was a challenging time, but it strengthened our bond immensely. Jenny got married young, at 23, to her high school sweetheart, Mark, 31M. They had their son, Zach, 6M, a year later. Unfortunately, their marriage hit some rough patches, and they separated for a while when Zach was 2. During this time, I became a major source of support for Jenny and practically a second parent to Zach. I would babysit him almost every day while Jenny worked and tried to sort out her marriage. We developed an incredibly close relationship during this period. Thankfully, Jenny and Mark were able to work things out and got back together when Zach was 4. They're now stronger than ever, but my special bond with Zach has remained. He still calls me Auntie Sasa, a nickname he gave me when he couldn't pronounce Amber, and I try to spend time with him at least once a week. Now, about William. We met 3 years ago through a mutual friend at a charity event. William works in finance, and I'm a marketing executive. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love of travel and cooking. William was divorced and had a son, Kyle, Ainsar M., from his previous marriage to Lisa, 36F. At first, everything seemed perfect. William was charming, attentive, and seemed to understand the importance of my relationship with my family, especially Zach. He even encouraged me to spend time with them, saying he admired how close we were. William told me that his divorcee from Lisa had been amicable, and they shared custody of Keely. Kyla would stay with William every other weekend and for a month during the summer. When I first met Kyle, he seemed like a sweet kid, if a bit shy. William explained that Kyle was still adjusting to the divorce and might take some time to warm up to me. As our relationship progressed, I started to notice some issues with Kyle's behavior. He would have intense tantrums, often becoming physically aggressive. During one incident, he threw a remote control at me when I asked him to lower the TV volume. William brushed it off, saying Kyle was just having a bad day. These bad days seemed to happen more and more frequently. Kyle would refuse to eat anything I cooked, saying it was gross even before tasting it. He once drew on our living room wall with permanent marker and blamed it on our neighbor's cat. When I tried to discuss these incidents with William, he would get defensive and accuse me of not being patient enough. Despite these challenges, William and I got engaged on our second anniversary. We were having dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date, and he proposed with a beautiful vintage ring that had belonged to his grandmother. I was overjoyed and immediately said yes. The next day, we visited my family to share the news. Zach was thrilled and asked if he could be part of the wedding. Without thinking, I asked him if he wanted to be our ring bearer. His face lit up and he started jumping up and down with excitement. William seemed happy too, smiling and telling Zach he'd do a great job. For months, Zach talked about nothing but being the ring bearer. He even practiced walking slowly down our hallway, carrying a pillow with a toy ring. Jenny told me he was taking his job very seriously and had been on his best behavior, wanting to prove he was responsible enough for the task. Everything seemed fine until last week when we had dinner with William's parents, Barbara, 65F, and George, 67M. We were discussing wedding plans, and Barbara asked about the ceremony details. I mentioned how excited Zach was to be the ring bearer, and that's when things took a turn. William's face immediately fell, and he said, "Oh, I thought Kyle would be doing that." I was confused because we had never discussed this before. I explained that I had already asked Zach months ago, and he was really looking forward to it. William got visibly upset and said it wasn't fair to exclude Kyle from such an important role. His parents agreed, saying it would mean so much to Kyle to be part of the ceremony. Barbara went on to say that as the groom's son, Kyle should have priority in the wedding party. I was taken aback by their reaction. I tried to compromise and suggested maybe both boys could do it together, but William insisted Kyle should do it alone since he's older. He accused me of favoring my nephew over his son and said I needed to make more of an effort to include Kyle in our family. I stood my ground and said I wasn't going to take this away from Zach. I explained how much it meant to him and how he'd been preparing for months. William got angry and left the dinner early, leaving me to deal with his parents' disapproving looks. Barbara told me I should reconsider if I wanted to be part of their family, implying that putting Kyle first was a requirement. George was quieter, but nodded in agreement with his wife. I left their house feeling confused and upset. Since then, William has been giving me the cold shoulder. He keeps bringing up how selfish I'm being and how I'm not considering Kyle's feelings. He even called Jenny to try to get her to convince Zach to step down, which I think was completely out of line. Jenny was furious when she told me about the call. She said William had tried to guilt her, saying that Zach had two parents in his life while Kyle only had him. Jenny told him that was unfair and that he had no right to ask Zach to give up something he was so excited about. This whole situation has created a lot of tension between William and me. We've had several arguments about it, with William accusing me of not being committed to becoming a stepmother. He says if I really loved him, I would understand why this is so important for Kyle. I've tried to explain my perspective, that I'm not choosing Zach over Kyle, but rather keeping a promise I made months ago. I've suggested other ways to involve Kyle in the wedding, like having him do a reading or help with the guest book, but William dismisses these ideas. I'm starting to see a side of William I hadn't noticed before. He seems to expect me to always put Kyle first, even at the expense of my own family. I'm worried about what this means for our future together. I love William, and I want to make our relationship work, but I don't think I'm being unreasonable here. Zach was asked first and has been looking forward to this for months. I don't want to disappoint him just to appease William and his family. At the same time, I'm concerned about the rift this is causing between William and me right before our wedding. I'm starting to wonder if we have different expectations about how we'll blend our families. Am I the asshole for refusing to let Kyle be the ring bearer instead of Zach? Update 1. Thank you all for your responses. The past week has been a whirlwind of emotions and revelations, and I'm still trying to process everything. I'll do my best to provide a comprehensive update on what's happened since my last post. First, I want to address some questions that came up in the comments. William and I have been together for 3 years total. We met at a charity gala where we were both volunteers. I was helping with event coordination, and William was there representing his company, which was a major sponsor. We bonded over our shared love of giving back to the community, and things progressed quickly from there. Regarding Kyle, I realize now that I probably should have given more context about his behavior issues. It's not just normal kid stuff or typical acting out due to the divorce. Kyle has a history of severe anger management problems that have been escalating over the years. When William and I first started dating, Kyle was 5, and his outbursts seemed like typical tantrums. But as time went on, the incidents became more frequent and intense. He's been expelled from 2 schools for fighting with other students and even a teacher once. He often destroys things when he's angry, like the time he smashed all the framed photos in William's apartment because he didn't want to go back to his mom's house. William always makes excuses for Kyle's behavior, saying he's just acting out because of the divorce and will grow out of it. But it's been 4 years since William and Lisa split up, and Kyle's behavior seems to be getting worse, not better. I've gently suggested therapy multiple times, but William gets defensive and says Kyle doesn't need to be fixed. After my last post, I tried to have a calm discussion with William about the ring bearer situation. I explained my perspective and why it was important to me to keep my promise to Zach. I also expressed concern about Kyle's ability to handle such a responsibility given his behavioral issues. William got defensive immediately. He accused me of not caring about Kyle's feelings and said if I really wanted to be a stepmother, I needed to put Kyle first. He brought up times when I've spent with Zach, saying I clearly prefer my nephew to his son. This led to a bigger argument about our future and how we'll handle blending our families. William revealed that he expects Kyle to live with us full-time once we're married. This was shocking news to me. We had always discussed keeping the current custody arrangement. When I expressed concern about this sudden change of plans, William blew up. He said I clearly didn't love Kyle, and he was starting to rethink the wedding. He accused me of misleading him about wanting to be a family and said he couldn't marry someone who wouldn't fully embrace his son. I was stunned. In all our time together, William had never raised his voice at me like that. William stormed out and went to stay with his parents for a few days. While he was gone, I did a lot of thinking about our relationship and whether we're truly ready for marriage. I realized there were a lot of issues we hadn't fully addressed, particularly regarding Kyle and our expectations for the future. When William came back, he acted like nothing had happened. He casually mentioned that he had already told Kyle he could be the ring bearer. I was furious that he had gone behind my back like that, especially after our argument. We had another big fight where a lot of issues came to the surface. William admitted that his parents have never really approved of me. They think I'm too career-focused and worry I won't be a good stepmother to Kyle. Apparently, they've been pushing William to assert more control in our relationship and make sure Kyle is the priority. William confessed that he sometimes agrees with them, feeling that I don't make enough effort with Kyle. I was hurt by this revelation. I've always tried to be kind to Kyle, despite his challenging behavior. I've attended his school events, helped with homework, and tried to plan fun activities for us as a family. It feels like nothing I do is ever enough for William or his parents. We also discussed Kyle's behavior issues more openly. I expressed my concern that Kyle needs professional help to deal with his anger. William finally admitted that Lisa has been pushing for therapy too, but he's been resistant because he doesn't want Kyle to feel like there's something wrong with him. I'm really struggling with all of this. I love William, but I'm starting to see some red flags I had been ignoring. The way he dismisses my feelings and goes behind my back is not okay. And the fact that he expects me to just accept Kyle moving in full-time without any discussion is concerning. I'm also worried about how this will affect my relationship with my own family. Jenny is furious about William trying to pressure Zach out of the ring bearer role. She says she's losing respect for William and is concerned about how he'll treat me in the future. For now, we've agreed to put wedding planning on hold while we try to work through these issues. I've suggested couples counseling, but William is resistant to the idea. He thinks we should be able to figure things out on our own. I'm not sure what the future holds for us at this point. I know I need to have some serious conversations with William about expectations and boundaries. I'm also considering reaching out to Lisa to get her perspective on co-parenting with William and dealing with Kyle's behavior. I'll update again once I have more clarity on the situation. Thank you all again for your support and advice during this difficult time. Update 2. Things have taken a dramatic turn since my last update, and I'm still trying to process everything that's happened. I'll do my best to explain the events of the past few weeks. About a week after my last post, William and I had another heated argument about the wedding and Kyle's role in our lives. He kept insisting that I needed to get on board with his plans or our relationship wouldn't work. He said that Kyle moving in full-time was non-negotiable and that I needed to start treating Kyle like my own son. I tried to explain that while I care for Kyle, I'm not comfortable with such a major change without discussing it first and addressing Kyle's behavioral issues. I also pointed out that we hadn't even attempted family therapy or worked on blending our families gradually. William became increasingly agitated during this conversation. He accused me of never really wanting to be a mother to Kyle and said he should have listened to his parents' concerns about me from the beginning. In the heat of the moment, I suggested that maybe we should postpone the wedding until we could sort things out. William stormed out, saying he needed space to think. The next day, I received a hysterical call from my sister Jenny. Apparently, Kyle had shown up at her house and tried to convince Zach to give up his ring bearer role. When Jenny intervened, Kyle had a massive tantrum and ended up breaking several items in their living room, including a vase that had belonged to our late mother. Jenny was understandably upset and wanted to know what was going on. She said Kyle had been yelling about how it was his right to be in the wedding and that Zach was ruining everything. Zach was terrified and hiding in his room when Jenny called me. I was mortified and had no idea how Kyle even knew where Jenny lived. When I finally got a hold of William, he admitted that he had taken Kyle there himself. He thought if Kyle talked to Zach directly, they could work it out between themselves. I was furious that he would put our nephew in that position and potentially traumatize both boys. This incident was the last straw for me. I realized I couldn't marry someone who would manipulate children and disregard my feelings so blatantly. When William finally came home, I told him the wedding was off. He seemed more angry than upset, accusing me of never really loving him or Kyle. He said I was choosing my fake son, Zach, over his real child. As I was packing some of my things to stay with a friend, I discovered something shocking. William had been going through my phone and emails for months. He had screenshots of conversations with my friends and family where I had expressed doubts about our relationship or concerns about Kyle's behavior. There were even recordings of phone calls I'd had with Jenny discussing the wedding planning. I felt completely violated. When confronted, William didn't even try to deny it. He said he had to protect himself because he always knew I would leave eventually. He claimed he needed evidence that I was an unfit stepmother in case we ever got into a custody battle over Kyle. I was stunned by his paranoia and manipulation. William then threatened to use these private conversations against me if I tried to ruin his reputation by telling people why we broke up. He said he would make sure everyone knew how I emotionally abused Kyle by favoring Zach. I'm writing this from my friend's guest room, still in shock over how quickly everything unraveled. I've contacted a lawyer to make sure William can't follow through on his threats and to discuss my options for protecting my privacy. I've also reached out to Lisa, Kyle's mom, to apologize for everything and offer to pay for any therapy Kyle might need. She was surprisingly understanding and revealed that she's been trying to get Kyle into therapy for years, but William always refused. I feel like I've woken up from a long dream. Looking back, there were so many red flags I ignored because I wanted this relationship to work. I'm heartbroken, but also relieved in a way. I know I made the right decision, even if it hurts right now. My family has been incredibly supportive through all of this. Jenny and Mark have offered to let me stay with them until I figure out my next steps. Zach keeps asking when we can have another Auntie Sasa and Zach day, which warms my heart. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I need to take some time to heal and reflect on this experience. Thank you all for your support and advice throughout this journey. Update 3. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some final thoughts on this whole situation. A lot has happened, and I'm still processing everything, but I'm in a much better place now. First, I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It really helped me stay strong during a difficult time. Your comments made me realize I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did, and gave me the courage to stand up for myself. After our breakup, William tried several times to convince me to reconsider. His approach varied wildly. Sometimes he'd apologize profusely, saying he realized he'd been wrong and promising to change. Other times, he'd make veiled threats about exposing my private conversations. Thanks to my lawyer's advice, I've kept all communication with him to a minimum and only through proper channels. And I've since learned that William's controlling behavior and invasion of privacy wasn't limited to me. His ex-wife, Lisa, reached out after hearing about our split. We met for coffee, and she shared some disturbing stories about their marriage and the real reasons behind their divorce. It turns out William's possessiveness and manipulation tactics have been a long-standing issue. Lisa told me that William had isolated her from her friends and family during their marriage, always accusing her of cheating or plotting to leave him. He would go through her phone and email regularly, claiming it was his right as her husband to know everything about her life. When she finally decided to leave, he threatened to take full custody of Kyle, using out-of-context conversations and photos to paint her as an unfit mother. Hearing Lisa's experiences was like looking into a mirror of what my future could have been. It made me even more certain that I'd made the right decision in ending our engagement. Regarding Kyle, I'm sad to say that the situation hasn't improved much. Lisa has finally managed to get him into therapy, despite William's continued resistance. The therapist has suggested that Kyle might have oppositional defiant disorder, which explains a lot of his behavioral issues. Lisa is working hard to get Kyle the support he needs, but William is still in denial about the severity of the situation. On a more positive note, my relationship with my nephew Zach is stronger than ever. Jenny and I explained the situation to him in an age-appropriate way, and he's been incredibly understanding. He was worried at first that he had caused the problems between William and me, but we reassured him that adult relationships are complicated, and this wasn't his fault at all. And we're planning a special ring bearer training day soon, just for fun. Zach is excited about practicing his walk down the aisle, even though there's no wedding planned right now. Jenny suggested we make it a fun day out, maybe going to a park and having a picnic afterward. It's heartwarming to see how resilient kids can be. As for me, I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. I've started therapy to work through some of the trust issues this experience has brought up. It's been helpful to have a professional to talk to about everything that happened. My therapist has helped me recognize some patterns in my past relationships and why I might have overlooked red flags with William. I'm also throwing myself into my work and reconnecting with friends I had neglected during my relationship with William. I've taken up yoga and started learning to paint, both of which have been great for stress relief. It feels good to focus on my own growth and happiness for a change. My family has been incredibly supportive through all of this. They've rallied around me, making sure I'm never alone for too long and always have someone to talk to. We've been having weekly family dinners, which have become a highlight of my week. It's reminded me of how important these connections are and how much I missed them when I was so focused on my relationship with William. I've learned a lot from this experience. I now know the importance of maintaining my own identity in a relationship and not ignoring red flags. I'm also much more aware of the complexities involved in blending families and the need for clear communication and boundaries from the very beginning. While I'm not ready to date again just yet, I'm optimistic about the future. I know that when the right person comes along, I'll be better equipped to build a healthy, respectful relationship. For now, I'm enjoying rediscovering who I am as an individual and what I want out of life. Thank you all again for your support throughout this journey. If there's one thing I hope others can take from my story, it's to trust your instincts and never compromise your values for someone else's approval. It's okay to put yourself first sometimes, especially when it comes to your mental health and well-being. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm facing it with a renewed sense of strength and self-awareness. Whatever comes next, I know I'll be able to handle it.